All right, hi everyone. Welcome to the third episode of our Security Wars webinar series. Culture Strikes Back. It's about 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, so we're gonna get started here in about 2 minutes. Give some time for some stragglers to come on in, but we'll get started officially at 1:32. But in the meantime, enjoy this Star Wars-esque screen. All right, it is now 1:32, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to Security Wars, Culture Strikes Back, the third episode of our CMMC webinar series presented by Etactics and Rea Associates. First things first, we got to go through the introductions here. So by now you probably know Ty. You know him, you love him. He is the Senior Information Assurance Manager at CMMC Registered Practitioner on Rea Associates Cybersecurity team. Can be found ensuring organizations, technology, and networks drive business objectives by identifying potential loss events, reducing their frequency and loss magnitude. With more than 10 years of industry experience, he's involved with the Central Ohio ISSA, the Greater Ohio FAIR Chapter, the Ohio River Valley Cloud Security Alliance, and the Infragrad Columbus. Welcome, Ty.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. And me, I don't want to spend too much time on me. My name is Matt Moneypenny. I'm the lead marketing and sales analyst at Etactics. A lot of my background is in content marketing, inbound marketing, all that kind of good stuff. And I will be your co-host today, followed by Zach Getz, who's a senior software developer at Etactics, specifically the Connect Plus business unit. He oversees and guides the continual development of Etactics compliant management technology, known as K2 compliance, to ensure that it helps organizations navigate mandated laws and regulations. Zach has a decade of experience in the software development space, immediately starting his career at Etactics upon graduation from the University of Akron. Welcome, Zach.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. Enough with the introductions here. This is the third episode, so by now you know all three of us, or I've seen us in some capacity. So let's get right into it. So pre-assessment readiness for this third part, right? The goal of pre-assessment readiness is to collect and carefully catalog all objective evidence needed, which includes demo sufficient adaptation or adoption of practices and processes, and then conducting of organizations seeking certification or OSC's preparedness and minimize impacts to the assessment.
Yeah, that is really what it's all about, right? Minimizing the impact to the assessment and actually being able to build a body of work that showcases that you are at the maturity level you're asking to be assessed at. Mm-hmm. And it'll make the process easier and potentially a little cheaper.
Oh, okay. So, by now in this third webinar, if you sat in on all of them, you know that we like to keep our audience engaged via poll questions throughout. So our first poll question for you is the true and false. CMMC is an all or nothing certification. And the poll should be open, thanks to Abby, who's in the background. And you guys can go ahead and answer that poll.
I just want to say, while the attendees are waiting to answer, even though it says at the bottom, organizers and panelists don't vote, I want to be a bad boy and vote.
Do it.
Yeah, it doesn't even let me.
Yeah, I haven't even, see, look at that, and he tried. I didn't try.
Zach, you dog. Playing our results. So it looks like over half of us have voted, 59%, and it's split 50-50 between true and false. So
Wow.
the correct answer, Ty, is?
The correct answer is true. It is all or nothing for certification. So those of you who said that it was false, I am going to relegate you back to Padawan training. You're going to have to go back through the first 2 series of the episodes we did here to come up to speed. So this is what really differentiates CMMC from everything else out there around HIPAA or PCI. HIPAA being health, PCI being credit card. So I always try to stop myself from doing the acronym thing, right? But the reality is you can have some things that you're working on in these particular environments and still conduct business. The Department of Defense is saying no. If you don't have these things in place, you cannot win a contract. And quite frankly, you cannot even see a contract. And if you lie about it and we catch you, not only are we going to bring you up on false claims, but we're gonna get our money back.
Right. It's a very, it's a very intense process, and it's arguably very expensive with the effort that goes into it. So that's why it's an all or nothing as well, just because you need to make sure that you have everything, all your I's dotted, everything checked.
I like T's crossed since I'm a tie,
Yeah, right. I like that too. So to continue, OSCs or organizations seeking certifications, right? You're going to see that acronym a lot. It's a long phrase, so we're going to use OSC. They may choose self-prep or assess, engage third-party consultants, or allow C3PAO to provide pre-assessment readiness checks.
You want me to jump in there?
Yeah, if you would like to.
I would just say we said C3PAO, but obviously registered provider organizations can help as well too. The biggest thing in there is if you do self-prep assessment, right? You got to have the man hours and the manpower to be able to do it, along with accomplishing whatever your other business objectives are, because you're going to be pulling somebody away from doing the other work that you would normally have them do, and it's labor intensive. Engaging a third-party consultant, the RPO, and even if you choose somebody outside of the accreditation body, there's a cost involved with that. And a lot of times, just like in the assessment, you can reduce some of that cost if you have some level of self-preparation in there already.
Right.
But the last final thing I'll say is your certified third-party assessor who helps you pre-assessment cannot also be the person who does the assessment. So part of the ethics commitment through the CMMC-AB says if you help somebody prep, you cannot, in essence, grade your own homework, which used to be my favorite thing in like 3rd and 4th grade, when they're like, okay, you can grade your own math. Yes, I got 100.
100% every time.
Every time. And that's probably why they don't allow you to do it.
And just to add on to that, I think one of the hardest parts about this is like, you say you're doing something and now you got to actually prove when this assessor comes in that you are doing it. And how do you know that the evidence you have is sufficient to be able to prove that you're doing it, right? Without someone with some amount of experience to be able to judge what you have, it's kind of difficult to even do some of those self-assessments because what you have may not be sufficient for what you're going to need when the assessment time comes around.
That's a great point, Zach.
Right. Unfortunately, those organizations that are seeking certification cannot use the Jedi mind trick. It would be nice, but that's just not something that they can do, and they probably don't have the powers to do so. But just wanted to throw that in there. So with that, let's take a look at the CMMC-AB Marketplace, right? So this is pretty much just a screenshot of the website, just to kind of show you what it looks like, the official website. It's a great resource to kind of look at and evaluate these individuals and organizations and these assessors. It's kind of like when Luke and his dad were evaluating all the droids on Tatooine. He ended up purchasing C-3PO, no relation to C-3PAO and R2-D2, so it's very similar there. Right.
I think that's a really great point, right? I guess if I could chime in one thing there, Matt, it would be, that CMMC-AB is your best source. The other thing would be too, behind the ethics part of that. So you did the screenshot, which I love. If you look down there in the middle for search where it says C3PAO candidate pending CMMC ML3 assessment, just an FYI, if anybody's telling you that they are maturity level 3 assessment capable third-party assessors, there's nobody assessed there yet. There's only 155 right now that are candidates. We're in the application process, and they still have to vet people's background before they even put you in the candidate pool. So, there's a little truth in advertising when you go to this site.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably there more so just as a preparation for them, but if you get, could open up the opportunity for someone to say that they fall under that maturity level, but they certainly do not yet. So, good point.
Call that a little 3-card money.
Yeah, exactly. A little maturity level 3 card money.
Yeah.
So the readiness review, right? So the OSC, the organization seeking certification or consultant, collects 2 forms of objective evidence, which is also known as OE for each practice. Neither may falsify or misrepresent self-assessment, and the RPO or C3PAO can help create missing information, improve processes and practices. So with, throughout this webinar, anytime we kind of mention objective evidence as a spoiler alert, we're going to go ahead and bring it to Zach, and we'll put him under the spotlight to kind of show K2 compliance and how it kind of helps organizations show that objective evidence. So with that, I'm going to send over this credential to Zach in just a second here. Once I figure out how to get there, there we go. And then Zach, you should be able to present.
Not quite yet. There we go. Yep. Okay, awesome. Can you see K2 right now?
Yes, sir.
Sure can.
Okay, awesome. So kind of off that point, what K2 compliance provides is an overview of what objectives you have sufficient evidence for and which ones you're kind of lacking on. Also for each objective, it kind of shows you what entities you need specific evidence for. So for example, if we look down here for privacy and awareness training, you are required to upload evidence in the system for each employee. In some cases, let's say like a data flow diagram objective, which kind of states that you need to have a different data flow diagram for each information system. So kind of how this works is the system goes ahead and provides an overview of which information system you have sufficient evidence for and which ones you're lacking. And this is very, a lot of times what people end up saying is I have a spreadsheet for this or a spreadsheet for that. And then when it goes to collect this, it's a lot of time, energy, and frankly, money that correlates to try and find all this evidence. So having it in one centralized repository just makes it much easier. So as you can see down here, whenever you have the sufficient evidence for a particular information system in this case, you can retrieve that evidence very easily here. Also, the system kind of states how long that evidence is good for, and it kind of changes based on what type of evidence that you're required to upload. So you can see for this one, we got about a year because I just kind of attested to this morning. So at the end of this year, the system will notify me, hey, it's time to do this objective again. I'm going to need to reach out and get a new data flow diagram for this particular information system so we have the most up-to-date evidence in the system. If I ever wanted to see that piece of evidence, I would just come right down here, and I'm able to first off see who uploaded the evidence, who said that this evidence was sufficient for what it is, and as well as retrieve it, and I can open it and actually see what the data flow diagram was at that point in time. This is nice because one, it tracks who actually uploaded it and who attested that this evidence kind of passed. So in a lot of cases, you're gonna be working with your RP, or you can do some self-assessment here, but there's not really a way to like falsify who said that this evidence was uploaded and suffices. So if you wanted to upload some additional evidence, let's say we wanted to work on one of these information systems that are not met, what we would do here is click Add Evidence. You're presented with 3 different options. You can either have you or your RP work with you and attest as evidence. So essentially what that is just stating that they saw this is working, this is up and running. Once again, remember for CMMC, you actually need 2 forms of evidence. Another option is just to upload evidence, and that's that upload any physical evidence that you actually have, or you can gather evidence. So a lot of times this evidence is in a different part of the organization, maybe not a user of the system, but maybe you need to send an email to the CISO and gather some information. As soon as they fill out that form, it automatically gets sent back in the system and uploaded under that particular entity, in this case, information system. So if we wanted to upload some evidence, what you do is you come in here, you choose your file. Let's upload web server 2. We do a simple attestation. Attached is the data flow diagram. And whenever I have to type on share, I always stumble across that. You say how long the evidence is good for, and you can also say whether or not this meets it, partially meets it, things like that. And I forget which one we were doing. We're going to do web server 2. So you say this evidence is good for web server 2. Click upload evidence, and it'll take a second. And if that has sufficient evidence, now you'll see you have 2 out of 3 completed here. The last way, and I'll just quickly show this, if you wanted to gather some of that evidence from an external party or someone else in your organization, not a user of the system, you can actually go and gather the evidence. We have a few pre-made forms that they can actually use to fill out, and those can be created through the system as well. So what you can do here is say next. I'm trying to gather information for a customer order database. So what I'll do is I'm just going to send this to myself. Etactics.com. Here you can actually draft an email and send them a form. And when they get that, they can review it and then upload the data diagram or data flow diagram, and that'll flow right back into the system. And it'll be just like any other piece of evidence. Once I send that email out, I'd be presented with a form kind of like this, where you can put their name, title, and then the actual data flow diagram. And once again, all of these forms in that, we call them information requests, can be completely customizable based on what type of information you're trying to get. Yep. So I'd say that's about it for right now.
I would just jump in here if I could, Zach, and say that this tool in itself is instrumental not only in the preparation for it, but also demonstrating a culture that's monitoring all these particular areas and staying well abreast of what's going on in their environment. I can count on both hands the number of times where you go into an organization and they share they've got an employee policy book and they share it with you, an employee handbook, and you look through it, and the last time it was reviewed or put in place was 8, 9, 10 years ago. That does not speak to a culture of continuous improvement. And even though that's not necessarily the language of CMMC, it actually holds to that whole lean or Lean Six Sigma thinking process around continuous improvement. And so, K2 with all that evidentiary evidence and the triggers and alerting and being able to tell you where you're at in your system security program or in your maturity level, is really kind of unprecedented out there. And to your point, you're not stumbling to try to find it with a spreadsheet. It's a repository for all that evidentiary evidence. And so when it comes time for the next part that Matt's going to talk about, it will help make your life that much easier.
Yep. Right. Yeah. And I like how you mentioned culture there. It's almost like this was planned, culture strikes back. That's the name of this entire webinar. So it was well done.
Thank you.
And I would say
I didn't write it.
Yeah. Right. It was perfect. All right. So
I would say it's a nice medium also to work with your someone who's preparing you to go through an assessment. You can work with them. It's a tool to communicate back and forth and just see, okay, did my RP think that this evidence that we're uploading is sufficient for what we want? I think it's a critical part to be in tandem with someone who actually can help you.
So true.
Exactly. Right. So, with that, to get back into what we were doing, let's open this back up with another poll question. So we said this a few times, and it was in the slide before. So this is kind of a test to see if you were paying attention. The question is, how many forms of OE must you show? And I'm not even gonna tell you what OE is.
Forms of OE you must show. How many?
Yeah, exactly. I figured that Yoda was perfect for this. He makes a couple of appearances throughout this webinar, I will say.
Yeah, he does. My all-time favorite quote is "Do or do not. There is no try." Right?
Yeah. We featured that in the first episode too, which was great.
Yeah.
It was a good send-off, good start.
So I'm probably too old to be wearing T-shirts that have logos with stuff like that on it, but I've got one that has Yoda on it, and then it has like a pull tab for words of wisdom.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Never too old for Star Wars. Let's make that very clear. So it looks like we got 53% voted right now. So it's 50-50 again. We got 50% said 2, 50% said 3.
I think the audience is just pulling our leg right now, right?
Yeah.
2 is good. More evidentiary is better, but the real answer to the question is at least 2, right? If you could demonstrate more, that'd be great. But the reality is you only need to be able to have 2 OEs in order to make sure that you're there.
Right. Exactly. Those of you who said 3, I mean, you're just more prepared, No harm in
That's right.
that.
You went beyond your Eagle Scout. You went and got your palms as well too, bronze, silver, and gold.
Yeah, exactly. So engaging with the C3PAO, right? So the OSC, or the organization seeking certification, registers. They also request, and then the CMMC contacts. Okay, so the OSC registers with the CMMC-AB. They request the CMMC certification and timing. And in the meantime, the CMMC-AB contacts the organization with available C3PAOs. And those organizations who need the certification are prioritized, right? So a big takeaway here is at this bottom, this is the relationship. This is where the relationship with your CMMC vendors are extremely important, right, Ty?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're on this high end right here, the prioritized end, as we've shared in previous episodes, right? There's only going to be roughly 15 contracts that require some form of CMMC written in the language on it. So those 15. So if you're part of those 15 organizations that are tied to a prime or are a prime that are doing business with the Department of Defense, you'll be prioritized. But I guess if I were to circle it back to anything, Matt, it would be, this is one of those things you don't want to wait for. So just as I shared, the 15 contracts, it's just growing exponentially from 2021 to 2026. And if you're making it a part of your revenue cycle, or you're thinking about dipping your toe in the waters to do business with the Department of Defense, it behooves you to just start building this into your business model and your culture and your organization as soon as possible, and not see your cybersecurity or your risk management programs as speed bumps or bolt-ons that you have to do, but make it part of your organization's DNA.
Right, exactly. And, to kind of talk back about the first episode where we talked about how much time that these organizations do have, there is still some time, but, to agree with what you're saying is it takes so much time on your end as an organization to start getting this process moving. So you might as well start as soon as you can.
Yeah, let's, Star Wars geekdom, raise your midichlorian rate, right?
Yeah.
You can either be a Jedi or not. So you got low midichlorians, you got a plan of action milestone that you got a lot of things to work on. But if you're ahead of the game and you're building this in, it'll make your assessment life that much easier when you select your third-party assessor and you go through the assessment and provide your OEs.
Right, exactly. I like that. I like that tie-in. That was really good. So selecting a C3PAO, right? This is a whole process. So step 1 is to select. Step 2 is to make available read-ahead information to include pre or self-assessment results, recent certification results, scope boundaries, maturity levels sought, right? So that's kind of the expansion of this. And, from this, there's more steps, but, step 1 and 2 relates back to K2 compliance, which is Zach's domain. So we're going to send it back to Zach again, and he's going to take it away here in just a second. There you go, Zach. Should have it.
Should have it. Can you see my screen here?
Yep.
Sure can.
Okay, awesome. So once again, kind of making that read ahead information available is just, kind of before we go through this whole process and, taking the time and money, it'd be nice to kind of know where we're at and kind of work with the assessor to actually see where we're at and if we're about ready. Because like Ty and Matt said in the beginning, it's all or nothing, right? So if you don't have the stuff, you got to make sure you got all your ducks in a row before you kind of start this, because if not, you're not going to get it, and then it's a lot of time and energy wasted. So kind of what you can see first off on the home screen here is just a simple dashboard of the current things you say you're doing. You have evidence to prove you're doing it. So once that kind of all shifts to green, and we know we have all of our evidence up to date and we're kind of ready to go, and then what you or an assessor may come in and say is, okay, here's all these different frameworks and regulations that we, adhere to. What are you doing for, let's say, the NIST cybersecurity framework and different parts of that? And what K2 kind of provides you is a simple gap analysis to kind of say, okay, it looks like you're doing this part of the NIST cybersecurity framework, and maybe you're not doing other parts. So really, and what we'll kind of do is we're also going to add CMMC regulation or requirements in here as well. So right away, you'll be able to see a gap analysis pretty quickly of what parts of CMMC you're kind of doing and which one, or do you have evidence to prove you're doing, and which ones do you not? And it's kind of be a pretty good tool to make sure you have that. One of the first things they're going to kind of look and say, well, what do you currently already have? And you can pretty much provide them with this and show them right away the stuff you do have and where you're a little lacking, and maybe they'll work with you or come up with a plan of when we should get started and things like that.
Exactly.
It's a very powerful tool. I mean, that's super helpful for sure. I mean, as you can see, it pretty much speaks for itself, right? If you can just log in and see where you meet and don't meet something that you need to meet, absolutely, especially if you want to, work in the CMMC world, then I mean, that's what you need. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right, and if you need to print it out, you'll be able to print all of that information out, right?
Yep.
And be able to hand over this physical, in essence, book of evidence that here's what we're doing and this is why we're ready. Because the bigger thing about that is people are thinking to myself, well, why do I have to turn over the book before I get assigned a C3PAO? Because in reality, currently as it stands, if you're not ready, you may be told that after the assessment of your ready to go docs, right? That you are not ready. And in essence, that potentially saves you a little bit of income. It increases a little bit more of a burn time. It might cost you some business as far as revenue or revenue objectives. But man, I can't think of any more ethical way than for somebody to look at what I've done and say, no, you're not ready yet, versus saying, okay, we'll do the assessment, take your money, and then tell you you're not ready, and then tell you you have to pay for us to come back out and do it again. That's not what it's all about, right? So, for whether you be a small business or a larger enterprise, whoever's helping you or whatever you're doing, the CMMC accreditation body really wants to help you be successful and not create another additional hurdle for you. But the criticality of safeguarding controlled unclassified information or federal contract information is huge. I mean, just look at the incidents that have transpired here over the last 30 days for us, right? We've had the Colonial Pipeline, and now we have JBS. I was reading something earlier, I can't remember what state it was, but a steamboat organization that does ferrying has been crippled by ransomware as well too. These threats are real, and it's not just for business espionage. And ransomware or whatever happens in this landscape is all about a monetary business model as well too for the threat actors. But the safeguarding American infrastructure and your intellectual property, for that matter, as well too, is critical if you're doing business in that defense industrial base.
Yeah, and brought up ransomware. I'd argue, a lot of times people will say, well, ransomware attackers are only going to target the bigger industries, the big corporations, that's where the money is. But I'd argue against that and say they're going to attack the smaller, more obscure organizations that have, they serve a random industry that no one really has heard of before because they don't have as many, or they're a lot less likely to have the cybersecurity measurements in place.
Right.
So,
look at you, they are attacking people with resources. Imagine going after the small business that hasn't really invested and hasn't bought a software like Etactics to help them keep a cadence going around their risk management or their CMMC process and things like that in their organization. But more importantly, they're buying a ton of software off the shelf or through Amazon that is really made for at-home work or for your personal stuff for streaming and video gaming, and not necessarily business related, right? Which would give you more granular controls to protect your organization, protect your data from things that are out there. So there's a lot of moving parts, but if I'm a bully, bullies don't pick on other bullies because the odds of them being successful isn't as good. They pick on somebody who they consider to be less intimidating or less threatening. It's probably a horrible example because I hate bullying, but in the end, I mean, that's what these threat actors are. They're bullies. They've made a business out of it. And as our world changes to be more and more digital, digital currency, digital information sharing, you have got to do your due diligence in safeguarding your organization, safeguarding yourself.
Right, exactly, well said. So let me get back into this here. So the next few steps after you've selected and made available read-ahead information, the C3PAO assigns certified assessor as lead assessor. The lead assessor reviews the information given to them, and then from there a go or no-go decision is rendered based on the information that is provided, right? So all the information that you get that is provided within K2 compliance and housed within there. I don't think I'm showing my screen. Hold on. There we go. You should be able to see my screen now. So all the information, there's steps 1 through 5, all the information that's provided and housed within K2, you can then provide to the lead assessor to review the information as a go or no-go decision, right? So it's very, very important and very straightforward. It might look like I have a, oh, there we go. Thanks, got it. So the next step after, step 5 is step 6. Assuming it is a go decision, that lead assessor determines that everything is good to go. The lead assessor and the organization seeking certification determines and confirms the scope, which involves staffing, dates, duration, and pricing.
Yep. So, go, no go, right? I like that positive intent. You've done all the heavy lifting up to this point. If you've been listening to us over the last 3 months, you've got a partner or you've built a breadth of information that gets you ready. And so now, the assessor goes, yes, you're ready. You talk about staffing because you've looked at your information systems. You've potentially now implemented maybe a segmented system where only the folks that need it, the engineers and the procurement folks on your team are dealing with that contract information or that CUI information. You're no longer what I like to call a flat earther, right? Where everything is just all on the same network like you might do at home. You've got all these different networks that segregate themselves and protect it. But more importantly, to the evidence that Matt was talking about, you've got all this evidence that if you've really lived it and you've documented it correctly and you turn it over to your assessor and they observe, they look at that evidence and then go with their own 2 eyes and, to take a manufacturing term stand in the circle and observe what you're doing, then you're in great shape. You can't, you really can't fail at that particular point if you're living it and breathing it and documenting it correctly.
Right. Thank you, Ty. So, this is pretty much the majority of the content that we're going to show you today. But, before we wrap up, we have one last question for you, and it's a very important question, which is, when should you start the CMMC process? When should you get started? And the gift below is a little bit newer from, from a Star Wars perspective. It's The Mandalorian, for those who don't know. And their whole thing is to say that this is the way. So, that might be a hint to the answer. Spoiler alert,
All right.
There we go. We got 70% voted and 100% got it right. So as soon as possible. So I'm glad that you guys picked up on that, because Ty had mentioned it earlier. And then, I mentioned it as well right after Ty mentioned it. So maybe that was on purpose. But yes, the correct answer is to seek the certification as soon as possible. You do have some time, but that isn't time for you to procrastinate. That's time for you to start the process.
And look, I think, Matt, you're in marketing, right? So
Yep.
From a business objective, once again, I talked about if you're dipping your toe into the water of DoD and trying to diversify your business portfolio and revenue streams, getting ahead of it versus getting behind of it and getting certified. I'm not saying you could use it as a marketing tool, but there's tons of folks out there that, advertise that they're ISO 9000 or ISO 27000, which are just these standards that say we're doing our due diligence. We walk our talk. We live the Jedi way, or the Sith way for that matter. But the problem is there can be only one. Where there's one, one student. But in CMMC, it's really all about getting there sooner versus faster. And then, you can get yourself and place yourself out there to potentially try to get more business. And because of that, folks can find you as well too as from the procurement site that you are a CMMC certified organization, and potentially reach out to you proactively, versus just the bidding process. If I'm the primary and I know you do a really good job with welding or machining, I could reach out to you directly and say, hey, I want a contract. I noticed on the CMMC-AB and on the supplier risk assessment that you are a risk score, that you are CMMC maturity level 1, and I need somebody who does your skill set. Would you be interested? That's a win-win for people. And I think, the other thing is it levels the playing field. Anybody that wants to be in this space has to be at a maturity level officially after 2026. But anybody that's in this place, the cost is pretty much the same, especially if you've done the preparation ahead of time. So, you can differentiate yourself. You can potentially gain more business. Nobody can game you and undercut you per se, unless they're willing to take a loss. But in the end, you are prepared to grow your organization, not only for safeguarding that data, but gaining additional work.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said regarding, using your CMMC certification as a marketing tool, right? Because, all these organizations, and I believe I've written something about this from a HIPAA presentation or a blog post in the past, but, they say that they're certified with all this stuff, but it goes back to it not being something that's 100%. You need to meet every single one of these criteria or you don't get the certification like CMMC. So it's really one of its kind in that respect. So yeah, that was a really good point.
Yeah.
So with that, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the question panel or in the chat, and we'll be sure to address them. Other than that, I do want to say this. that after this, you guys are now Jedi Masters in CMMC, in our eyes. So as Yoda says here, no more training do you require. Already know that which you need, right? So as you know, he doesn't talk in complete sentences, but he's basically saying that you're good to go.
Right. But I don't want to fight my dad.
Yeah. Of course, stuck into Luke in this one. Give you some time for some questions. Appreciate Abby working in the background. She made sure to tell me that I wasn't sharing my screen earlier, so I appreciate that.
I was about to say, we did such a good job. We haven't gotten any questions yet.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. We must have hit every single aspect of CMMC so thoroughly within these past 2 episodes that they're just dumbfounded with no questions. They're like, wow.
I love it.
4 questions on Star Wars. Covered it all.
We can answer some Star Wars questions, throw some trivia in there. Why not?
I've been impressed by my eyes now.
And somebody's going to ask some really tough questions, like they've got the book at home for all the characters.
Yeah. Well, what's everyone's favorite color lightsaber? Zach?
Oh, I always liked the double one that what was his name? The red one that came out.
Darth Maul.
Darth Maul, right? Yeah, that was. I remember as a kid when I saw that in the movie theaters, I was just amazed when it went out. I was like, wow, look at that.
Ty, what about you?
So I've always been a green lightsaber guy, even when I would play around with other people or play with my kids and, almost get kicked out of the Walmart because we were sword fighting with them in there. But I will say that Mace Windu, when they brought Samuel L. Jackson in the purple saber, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that's sweet.
I think purple was pretty kick butt as well.
Yeah, actually, I like purple as well, but the reason why his lightsaber was purple, some trivia, is because he wanted to be noticed on the screen when he was in like big fight scenes. So that's why his is purple. Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson, imagine that. Thank you for that trivia. That's perfect.
So we did get a couple questions here. One related to Star Wars and one related to CMMC. So we'll answer the CMMC first, get down to the business. They said, I'm not sure as to whether or not I want to get certified, but do you think that this will become harder to get a vendor in the future?
All right. So did I make a good face, my Popeye face?
Yeah.
I'm strong to the finish because I eats me spinach. I think it will become more difficult. And the reason I'm saying that to you is there's currently only 466 registered provider organizations in the ecosystem right now. There's supposed to be some certified third-party assessor training come here late summer. And so you figure folks are going to be stacking up. So there's going to be a lot of assessments, 1,500 of them roughly, that need to be done by end of December this year. And then, as you go along, each year incrementally increases. So 1,500 this year, 7,500 next year, and nearly 4.5 time increase nearly each time, I think is pretty significant. Did I say that right? Yeah, 4.5 times. So you want to get in front of it versus behind it. The reality is, if you're a small business or you're a large business, if you partner with someone, they can help you identify as well too for what you're doing in the DoD space. If maturity level 1 is where you need to be at, or do you really need to go all the way up to maturity level 3? Helping you reduce that scope and identify what data you have in your environment is going to be critical in making that decision. And then taking a look at your organization and how quickly does your culture adapt. We're really talking about change management. If you're not, if your IT isn't a regular part of your cadence conversation when you have meetings with your leaders, and you're talking more about turn time for inventory, or you're talking about revenue objectives and pipelines, and cybersecurity doesn't come up in those conversations, your journey is going to be a little bit longer. So I would say start sooner versus later, because not only for the assessment aspect of it, but you've got to get over the hump of the whole culture and change management piece. and those things take time.
Right. Well said. And then the next question that's Star Wars related is, what is the correct order to watch the movies?
Wow.
The highly debated topic.
Yeah, right. So technically, right, the first one is the one that had Liam Neeson in it, right? That I watched, and then oh my goodness, where's the one? Go ahead.
So that's a highly debated topic between, do you start with the original trilogy, which was
4, 5, 6.
A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, right.
I was given the correct answer. Your answer right there is my answer. That was the first movie I ever went to. My mom took me to it in 77 when I was 7 years old. So yeah, to me that's always the order I like to watch it in.
I would say it depends on the person, because
Yeah.
or who you're showing it to, right? Because if they don't know anything about Star Wars and they don't know that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad, right? So if you want to surprise them and have the twist in the third one when Anakin is actually Darth Vader, then you show them 1 through 3 first, and then all the way up through. And then you have to watch 1 through 3, then you have to watch Solo, then you have to watch Rogue One, and then you go into the next one, because Rogue One goes right into New Hope. But
Yep.
So it just kind of depends.
There you go.
Spoilers: Anakin Skywalker is actually Darth Vader. If you haven't seen the movie, it came out in 2001, so you're probably not going to watch it. That was 20 years ago. Right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. So with that, last thing is we are giving away an Instapot for those of you who have watched the webinar series, whether on demand or live. And the drawing for that is June 9th. So come June 9th, we will announce the winner and also send out the Instapot to them. So other than that, thank you for watching Security Wars webinar series on CMMC. In the meantime, feel free to contact Rea Associates or Etactics. And other than that, thanks everybody.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.